Once there was a man whose wife had died, and there was a woman whose husband had died. The man had a daughter, and the woman also had a daughter. The girls knew each other, and one day they decided to take a walk, and ended up at the woman's house. The woman said to the man's daughter, "Listen to me. If you tell your father that I'm interested in marrying him, I promise that you can bathe in milk every morning and drink wine every day. My daughter will have to drink water and wash in water." The girl went home and told her father what the woman had said. The man replied, "What should I do? Marriage can be a joy, but it can also be torture." Finally, he couldn't make up his mind. He took one boot off and said, "Here, take this boot. There's a hole in its sole. Take it up to the attic, hang it up on a big nail, and then pour some water into it. If it holds water, then I'll take a wife. If it runs out, I won't." The girl did as she told, and it turned out that the water made the sides of the hole contract, and the boot filled up to the rim. The girl told her father what had happened. He went upstairs to see for himself, and when he realized that it was all just as she had described, he went over to see the widow and courted her. And the wedding was celebrated the next morning. When the two girls woke up, the husband's daughter had milk to bathe in and wine to drink, but the wife's daughter only had water to bathe in and water to drink. The next morning there was water to bathe in and water to drink for both the husband's daughter and the wife's water. The next morning there was water to bathe in. And water to drink for both the husband's daughter and the wife's daughter. On the third morning there was water to bathe in and water to drink for the husband's daughter, and milk to bathe in and wine to drink for the wife's daughter. That's how things stayed. The woman grew hostile towards her stepdaughter and racked her brains thinking of ways to make her life miserable. She was envious too, for her stepdaughter was beautiful and kind, while her own daughter was ugly and nasty. Once on a winter day, when the ground was frozen solid and hill and dale were blanketed with snow, the woman made a dress out of paper, called the girl over and said, "Here, put this dress on. I want you to go out into the woods and fetch me a little basket of strawberries. I've got a real craving for them." "My goodness," the girl said, "there won't be any berries out there at this time of year. The ground is frozen and there's a blanket of snow covering everything. And why should I put on this dress made of paper? It's so cold outside that your breath freezes in the air. The wind will blow right through me, and thorns will tear the dress into pieces." "Why are you talking back to me?" the stepmother said. "Just get out there and don't show your face until the basket is full of strawberries." She gave the girl a crust of hard bread and said, "You can chew on that for the rest of the day." She was thinking to herself, once she's out there, she'll be freezing and will end up starving to death. I'll never have to set eyes on her again. The girl was completely obedient, and after putting on the dress made of paper, she went out the door with her little basket. There was nothing but snow as far as the eye could see, not a blade of grass in sight. When she got to the forest, she found a tiny cottage with three dwarves peering out the windows. She bade them good morning and knocked gently at their door. "Come in," they called, and she walked into the parlor and sat down on a bench near the oven. She was hoping to warm herself up and eat some breakfast. The dwarves said to her, "Give us a piece of what you have." "Gladly," she said, and she broke the crust of bread in two and gave them half of it. They asked her, "What are you doing wearing that thin little dress up here in the woods at this time of year?" "Oh," she replied, "I'm supposed to pick a little basket of strawberries, and I'm not allowed to go home until I've got it." When she had eaten her bread, the dwarves gave her a broom and said, "Sweep the snow away from the back door while she was outside." Sweep the snow away from the back door. While she was outside, the three little men conferred. What should we give her for being so good and kind and sharing her bread with us? The first said, "My gift will be that she becomes more beautiful with each passing day." The second said, "My gift will be that gold pieces shall fall from her mouth whenever she says a word." The third said, "My gift will be that a king will come and make her his wife." The girl did exactly what the dwarves told her to do, and she used the broom to sweep the snow from the back of the cottage. But what do you think she found while she was sweeping? Lots of ripe strawberries looking bright red in the snow. With great relief she picked a basketful, thanked the little men, and shook her hands with each one of them. Then she ran straight home and was hoping to give her stepmother what she wanted. When the girl walked into the house and said good evening, a piece of gold fell from her mouth. Then she told everyone what had happened in the woods, and as she spoke, pieces of gold continued to fall from her mouth, so that before long the parlor was filled with them. How arrogant, her stepsister cried, throwing money around like that. Secretly she was of course envious, and was hoping that she too could go out into the forest in search of strawberries. Her mother said, "No, my dear little daughter, it's much too cold. You'll freeze to death." But when the girl would not stop asking, she finally gave her consent and made a beautiful fur coat for her. Put it on, and her mother also gave her sandwiches and a cake to take with her. The girl went into the woods, walked straight to the cottage. The three little dwarfs were looking out the window as before, but instead of saying good morning, and without giving them so much as a glance or saying hello, she stumbled into the cottage, sat down at the oven, and began eating a sandwich with some cake. "Will you share that with us? Will you share that with us?" The little men cried. The girl responded, "It's really not enough for me. How can I possibly share this with anyone?" When she finished eating, the men said, "Here's a broom for you. Sweep the snow away from our back door for us." "Go sweep it yourself," she said. "I'm not your maid." When she realized that they were not going to give her anything, she went out the door. The little men conferred, "Why should we give her anything, when she behaves so badly, has a wicked and selfish heart, never giving anything away?" The first one said, "My gift will be that she becomes uglier with each passing day." The second one said, "My gift is that a toad will jump out of her mouth whenever she speaks." The third said, "My gift is that she will find an unhappy end." The girl went searching outside for strawberries, but when she couldn't find any, she was irritated and returned home. When she opened her mouth to tell her mother what had happened out there in the woods, a toad jumped out of her mouth. At every word. It didn't take long for everyone to learn to stay away from her. The stepmother was more annoyed than ever, and all she could do was think about how to inflict pain on her husband's daughter, who was turning more beautiful every day. Finally, she took a kettle, put it on the fire, and boiled yarn in it. When the yarn was boiled, she threw it over the girl's shoulder, gave her an axe, and told her to chop a hole in the frozen ice of the river, then to rinse the yarn. She was an obedient child, and she went over and cut a hole in the ice. While she was hacking away, a splendid carriage drove by, and a king was seated in it. The carriage came to a halt, and the king asked, "My child, what's your name, and what are you doing over there?" "I'm a poor girl, and I'm rinsing yarn." The king took pity on her when he saw how beautiful she was. He said, "Do you want to ride in my carriage?" "With all my heart," she replied, for she was happy to get away from her mother and her sister. The girl got into the carriage and drove off with the king. When she arrived at his castle, their marriage was celebrated with great splendor, for the little men had given her that as a gift. A year later, the young queen gave birth to a boy, and when the stepmother learned of her great happiness, she went with her daughter to the castle, and pretended that she was there to visit. One day the king left the castle, and no one else was at home when the evil woman grabbed the queen by her head, and her daughter grabbed her by the feet. They lifted her out of her bed and threw her out the window into a river that flowed past the castle. Then the old woman put the ugly girl into the bed, and she tucked her in right up over her head. When the king returned home and wanted to go talk to his wife, the old woman said, "Hush, hush, you can't see her now. She's got a fever, and you'll have to let her rest today." The king was not at all suspicious, and he returned the next day. When he started talking with his wife, a toad instead of the usual gold piece dropped out of her mouth whenever she said a word in reply. He asked what was wrong with her, and the old woman said it was just the high fever, that it would go away soon. That night the kitchen boy saw a duck swimming along the drainage canal, and the duck spoke these words: "Your Royal Highness, what's the news? Are you awake? Do you know of the ruse?" But he didn't answer. The duck said, "What are my guests doing today?" The kitchen boy replied, "They're sleeping soundly while you're away." Then she asked, "And my child, is he asleep?" He answered, "He's napping now, there's not a peep." When the duck turned into the queen, nursed the child, plumped up his bed and tucked him in, and then swam back down the drainage canal after turning back into a duck. She came 2 nights in a row, and on the third she said to the kitchen boy, "Go and tell the king he must take his sword and swing it over me 3 times when I cross the threshold." The kitchen boy ran to tell the king, who came with his sword and swung it 3 times over the ghost. The third time the wife stood before him, alive, healthy, and energetic, just as she had been before. The king was elated, but he kept the queen hidden in the bedroom until that Sunday, when the child was to be christened. And after the child had been christened, he asked what punishment should be given to the person who drags someone out of their bed and throws them into the water. The old woman replied, the scoundrel should be put into a barrel studded with nails and rolled down a hill into the water. The king said, "You have pronounced your own sentence." And he sent for a barrel like the one she had described, and put the woman with her daughter in it. The lid was hammered tight, and the barrel went rolling down the hill and fell into the river.